Good evening. Welcome and thank you for joining tonight's 60% Design drop-in session for the Martin Luther King Jr. Way Protected Bike Lane Project. We will start this presentation with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge the original inhabitants of this place, the Coast Salish and Duwamish tribes, who have since time immemorial have hunted, fished, gathered, and taken care of these lands. We respect their sovereignty, the right to self-determination, and we honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and water. Before we get started, I would like to introduce the members of our SDOT project team and who are in the virtual room with us tonight. My name is Lisa, and I'm the Communications and Outreach Lead for this project. Next, we have Marilyn, who's the project manager. We have Laurencio, who's the lead designer for the project. And we have Jonathan, the project developer. And then last, we have Wendy from the outreach team, who is handling behind the scenes elements for the presentation tonight. Before we move on to our presentation, we also have a few housekeeping items. In an effort to reduce background noise and improve everyone's experience, all attendees will be muted today. This event is being recorded and will be posted on our project website in the coming days. If you have any questions about the event itself, please post your questions to the chat thread and our team will do our best to respond. During the presentation, you are encouraged to engage with us. We invite you to submit your questions as they come to you. This is helpful so that you don't forget them along the way. You can send them through the Q&A box on your screen. Please do not post your specific questions about the project to the chat thread. Our team is small and will be closely monitoring the chat thread will not be closely monitoring the chat thread once the Q&A portion begins. Your questions will be answered after the presentation is complete. For today's presentation, we will be providing a brief project overview and showing our proposed designs at 5 key spots along the corridor. We will discuss how the project plans to proceed forward and what feedback we'd like from you. We will then move on to the live question and answer session. At SDOT, we want to deliver projects that contribute to a thriving, equitable community that is powered by dependable transportation. We want the transportation system to provide people with safe and affordable access to places and opportunities, and we are guided in doing this by our values of equity, safety, mobility, sustainability, livability, and excellence. The purpose of this project is to improve safety for people biking, walking, and driving, and to create better connections to transit and destinations between the Mount Baker Station and the future Judkins Park light rail station. We are focusing on the section of MLK Jr. Way South between South Judkins Street and South Winthrop Street, which gets you through the Rainier Ave South intersection and to the Mount Baker light rail station. Construction could begin by spring 2022 with a goal of completing improvements by 2023. This project began in the spring of 2020 following outreach for the citywide bicycle master plan implementation plan back in 2019. During that outreach effort, we received a lot of feedback stating a need for more connections in Southeast Seattle, especially heading north and south. This community process helped identify MLK as well as Beacon Ave as top priorities citywide. Once this project is complete, a route of protected bike lanes, the I-90 bike path, and neighborhood greenways will allow safe and comfortable cycling trips between Mount Baker, neighboring communities, and downtown Seattle. If you use 23rd Avenue or I-90, you're probably seen the Sound Transit construction of the new Judkins Park light rail station, and that is moving along. It's expected to open in 2023, and we want this project on MLK to be ready to help riders reach it. Seattle is also working to improve traffic safety with a Vision Zero goal of ending traffic deaths and serious injuries. In many locations, MLK functions as more of a highway than a city street with high rates of speeding as well as run off the road collisions, left turn, pedestrian, and other collisions that can be addressed through improved designs. We want this project to improve traffic safety for all users in an area where 4 community members have tragically lost their lives in collisions over just this past year or so. We introduced changes in 2020, such as changes to pedestrian signals and a reduced speed limit to improve traffic safety sooner, but want a project such as this one to help those new changes work even better. Since the last time we checked in, we've developed what we call a 60% design, where the major design questions about the project have been answered. This is a good time to share the design and incorporate feedback as we move towards final design. We've also been working with other SDOT projects in the area, such as improvements to Metro's Route 7 bus and the Accessible Mount Baker initiative, as well as private and public construction in the area. As we've worked on the design, we've also been working with you remotely through mailers, emails, online surveys, and phone interviews with businesses, organizations, and community members. Please visit the project webpage after the event for links to the 60% design online surveys. I will speak more about upcoming outreach opportunities later in the presentation. During our last round of outreach in November, we received around 100 participants at the online drop-in session and through the online survey. Over 50% of the folks who participated live in the project zip code, and another 28% live in adjacent neighborhoods. More than 2/3 of the folks who took the survey ride their bike in and through MLK at least a few times a month, if not more frequently. I'm going to, oops, I'm sorry. The survey, we also heard that the primary reason for folks not riding their bike in and through MLK Way was feeling unsafe. So the summary reports are available to download on the project webpage, and you can read more about the feedback that was shared with SDOT during previous rounds of outreach. I will now turn the presentation over to Marilyn, the project manager, to discuss the current designs.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. On this slide, we're showing the I-90 Mountains to Sound Trail and MLK connection, where we've designed a raised protected bike lane and bus island to accommodate people biking, walking, taking the bus, or driving. The shared bus stop will reduce interactions between bikes, cars, and buses on the corridor, providing improved safety and predictability for all users. And this will help keep transit moving and improve travel time for people riding buses. Design elements on this slide include the bike lane transition from street grade to sidewalk grade with slow down line markings. And we'll have a later slide that shows a little bit better what that will look like. The bike lane will be located between the travel lane and the sidewalk. Sidewalk level pedestrian crosswalks are across the raised protected bike lane to give visibility to pedestrians crossing. Markings for people biking and walking transit. Passengers board and a light, which is exiting into the bike lane. And bikes must yield to passengers boarding and alighting. In addition to the design features that you can see here, the project will also add right turn bicycle ramps to access the I-90 trail. Unique bus stop announcements will be added to buses serving the shared stops. These announcements will alert exiting passengers to watch for bikes when exiting the bus as buses approach the shared stops. Go to the next slide. Okay, this slide is showing South Massachusetts Street and MLK Way. So near this intersection, we have designed another raised protected bike lane and bus island on the west side of the street. And the northbound bus stop on the east side of the street shows also a raised shared protected bike lane and bus stop. There will be drainage improvements at this intersection, and you'll notice in the cross section that parking will be retained on the west side of MLK. Go to the next slide. Okay, so this set of photographs, this collage, gives a good representation of some of the improvements that we've been talking about. So this is what a raised protected bike lane looks like when it runs adjacent to a bus island. So you'll notice some of the features. These photographs, by the way, are taken from Northeast 65th Street underneath I-5. If any of you ever go up to Ravenna, that's where this is, and you can visit it in the field. So what we're showing here is the raised shared protected bike lane and bus stop, the bright yellow corduroy stripe, which you can see in the upper right-hand picture with a person walking on it. We're calling that a detectable strip in the following slides. So anytime I say detectable strip, that's what I'm referring to. and it's basically 12 inches wide, and I called it corduroy. Those 4 running vertical lines are raised, and they are cane detectable, so people with limited vision can very easily detect that with their cane, and that delineates the pedestrian area from the bicycle area. And so that is used at crosswalks and at stops. Sorry, I'm still talking about the pictures. Go back, thank you. You'll also notice the slow markings and lines for cyclists entering the bus stop zone, and that indicates very clearly when a bicyclist is entering the area where pedestrians entering and exiting the buses are likely to be. And there will be bicycle yield to pedestrian signage as well. So that's to sort of manage the people biking, people walking, waiting for the bus, getting on and off the bus transitions that are occurring at that zone. So everybody clearly knows where their areas are and what behavior they're expected to do. Okay, so that leads into the next slide. Thank you for waiting with me there. If we can advance, thank you. So this slide shows Bayview and MLK Way. At this intersection, we've designed new curb bulb, and there'll be a new curb bulb and ramp that will connect to the existing sidewalk with a new multi-use path on the west side of the street. Design elements here include the protected bike lanes on both sides of the street, which is pretty consistent through the corridor. The northbound bike lane will transition from a curb protected multi-use path to a protected bike lane. So you'll see that in the next slide as well, that we'll have a short section of multi-use path. There will be a new sidewalk and a curb ramp on the east side of the street to connect to the existing sidewalk with the new multi-use path, and then also drainage improvements in this area. And then you can see in blue the detectable strip, and that's what I was talking about before. That's the 1 foot wide, bright yellow, cane detectable corduroy stripe that separates the pedestrian zone from the bike zone. Okay, we can go to the next one. Thank you. So this is showing the other end of that multi-use trail at South McClellan Street and MLK Way. So currently the roadway has 4 travel lanes, 2 north, 2 south, plus a left turn lane. And this corridor is heavily used by Metro buses accessing the current location of the Mount Baker station. So our proposed design for this corridor will remove 2 travel lanes, and it will include the protected bike lanes again. The northbound protected bike lane will transition. You can kind of see it here, starting from this section and then going up to Bayview into a multi-use path. So it goes north of McClellan up to Bayview. There will be a concrete buffer that separates the bicycle lane from the driving lanes. And there will also be the detectable strip that then separates bicycles from pedestrians. So everybody has their own clear space to be in. There'll be a new sidewalk and a curb ramp on the east side that connects to the existing sidewalk with the new multi-use path. And as I said, the 1 foot detectable strip. So south of McClellan, you can see towards the right-hand side of the slide, there are some green pavement markings, and that indicates where there are going to be driveways. So we will be doing some breaks in the protected bike lane where there are driveways accessing businesses. And those are also to indicate the crossing points where there will be cyclists present, so that everybody's aware that there is this, this crossing movement. We can go to the next slide. Thank you. So this slide shows a little bit more of a zoom in on what's happening at Bayview and at McClellan. And so these are the transitions between, transitions into the shared multi-use path for pedestrians and bicyclists. And you can see a rendering, kind of an illustration between those 2 graphics. And it's showing what the buffer will look like. And this is the buffer that will separate the driving lanes from the bicycle lane. And there are breaks in this it's basically a raised curb, and there'll be breaks in it every 50 feet to allow for drainage to pass through. Thank you. So this slide is showing Rainier and MLK Way. There's a lot going on here. These are the proposed improvements adjacent to the Mount Baker station. So the accessible Mount Baker project is this is where we overlap with the MLK protected bike lane project. If you'd like to see information on the accessible Mount Baker project, there is a project webpage that you can go check that out. So the proposed near-term improvements in this area include new and widened curb bulbs and crosswalks, which will create shorter crossings. And so you can see that there are actually new crosswalks on the, let's see, my directions are a little bit turned, south and west legs that are not currently there. And then wider sidewalks as well, and curb bulbs, which will help to give pedestrians more visibility as they are entering and exiting these crosswalk locations. And so we're widening and repairing sidewalks to give some additional sidewalk space. There will also be right turn restrictions from Rainier to MLK. And this is where protected bike lanes that connect to the Mount Baker Light Rail Station will begin.
And I'm Jonathan Fraser, the project developer, and I'll get our last slide here on parking. So MLK Way south near Mount Baker and up until it reaches the tennis center does not have any on-street parking that would be changed by this project. The one area that would be changing is back up to the north, closer to the Sam Smith Park and the I-90 trail. In order to fit a turn lane, the 2 travel lanes, and 2 protected bike lanes, some of the parking must be removed on one or both sides of the street. We did a parking study last winter, shortly before the pandemic began, which helped to inform us about what parking looks like here in this area. We found that parking utilization was high on MLK itself, between Massachusetts Street and Holgate Street, and also on some of the side streets just west of MLK. On some of the other side streets and closer to the I-90 trail on MLK, parking use was very low. Based on the study, the design will replace parking with a protected bike lane on the west side of the street, south of South Judkins Street. But there's room for both parking and the protected bike lane on the east side. Again, this is towards the north near South Judkins Street. So moving a little bit farther south to closer to the trail, here we already have a paved median in place, and there will be a right turn lane. And so because of this, parking on both sides would have to be removed in this area. This is an area where parking use is typically much lower than elsewhere on MLK. South of South Massachusetts Street, parking would be removed on the east side and preserved on the west side. Parking on the west side is used by residents, but it's also close to other destinations like nonprofits and businesses. It also means that less parking would have to be removed in total, because the driveways on the east side of MLK mean that there's already not very much room to park. The design does include 1 block of new parking in an area where it is currently prohibited. This is on the west side of MLK between Holgate and Plum Streets. This will help replace some of the removed parking in the area. We're not adding any additional parking south of here because south of Plum Street, there just aren't that many clear destinations that don't already have their own off-street parking lots. And that wraps up the presentation. I think Lisa will guide us into questions now.
Yeah, so as you can see, hold up the Q&A box and please feel free to submit questions in here. There's also a little blurb you can see there in the corner about the survey, which I pushed live, should be live now. I'm going to check in a minute though, make sure it really did publish. And then want to let you guys know that the Q&A is open, so feel free to submit some questions. We can hold off on that because I want to kind of keep the, Wendy, you can put it back to the previous slide because I want folks to be able to know where to find and submit questions. And we'll hold space and I'll go on mute and we'll see get some questions. Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Elizabeth submitted that there's a slide on the MLK and Rainier intersection, and I thought the plan was to uncross those two and completely redo that intersection, but PED improvements imply that that plan has been canceled. Is that true? Jonathan, do you think you could maybe speak to that?
Yeah, I can cover that one. So what the improvements that we're doing with this project, these are what we're calling the near-term accessible Mount Baker improvements. So these are things that we could do within the next couple of years. They're relatively affordable, and they address some of the greatest, most pressing safety problems. I think especially getting that crosswalk underneath a pedestrian bridge where 3 people have been killed recently is a super important part of it. I think of the longer term accessible Mount Baker proposals, most of those were paused last year due to budget impacts from the coronavirus pandemic. Our revenue sources and our budget have been improving lately, and right now we're looking at some ways that we can get some parts of that proposal moving again. I think specifically getting the Mount Baker Transit Center relocated. Right now, that's on the east side of Rainier Avenue. And of course, you get off the bus, then you have to cross Rainier to get to light rail. And trying to get the transit center back to the west side of the street is probably going to be the top priority. We are working with the Office of Housing on that project. They're redeveloping a huge site just west of the station into affordable housing. And we want to make sure that this would be coordinated with that project.
Okay, so Benjamin, is the city of Seattle thinking about adding bike tool stations, perhaps at light rail stations? There was one that used to be at my local climbing gym that was super useful to tune my bike or pump the tires. Does anybody know about?
I could take that one. I'm currently on the Vision Zero team, but I did used to work with bike racks and some of the other bike fixtures we have around the city. We have had a lot of challenges with bike tool stations in the past. Probably most specifically, getting a pump that's really reliable in our climate year-round has been really hard for us. We've had a couple around in the past, but they've just not held up to really heavy-duty use. I know there have been some that have been installed by developers outside of their buildings that have been a little bit more successful. I wonder if this is perhaps a comment that either we or you as a community member could pass along within the area. I think it seems like something that Sound Transit might be interested in.
Yeah, that sounds like something good to pass along. Okay, another question that came in, I think this one will be for you, Laurencio, are mature trees going to be affected by this plan, like the trees along the MLK street? If yes, please explain how. If no, why not?
Yes, so this project is not going to impact any trees or landscaping along the project. Most of the improvements are staying within the existing paving and sidewalk areas. So because of that, we're not really impacting any of the trees or landscaping along this corridor.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Peter dropped something in the chat that we caught, which is, and this will be for you, Jonathan. The parking study was held during the winter. Parking would be lowest during the winter months, Peter's saying. It doesn't appear the timing accurately reflects park or resident parking at this time. And he's speaking specifically about the Massachusetts to Judkins section.
Yeah, we held the parking study while we were waiting for this project to begin back in January of 2020. We picked a week that was not a week when there were no holidays, so it would hopefully be a more typical week. And we were able to go out and basically count how many cars were out there in the middle of the day at 10:30 p.m. on a weeknight when people are home, and then also on a Sunday morning. We have not done an updated parking study now that we're in the pandemic. I've done some kind of anecdotal observations near Sam Smith Park, near the I-90 trail, and it does seem like parking use in that area is higher. I think maybe getting some updated counts could be something that we could do going forward. I think when I've yeah, when I've done kind of these informal counts much more recently, like back during the good weather just a couple weeks ago, I've seen about a half dozen cars on both sides, pretty close to the I-90 trail.
Okay, thank you. We have a question. Again, this plan has a bike lane terminating at South Irving. How will that be tied into existing bike lanes, or will it merge into MLK? Again, I think this one's for you, Jonathan.
Sure. Yeah, so the design does continue it a little bit past South Irving Street. So we do get riders to South Judkins Street. The part of MLK between Judkins and Rainier, this is the one that we want to work on first because it's where both speeds and collisions have been highest. One of the reasons that we are ending it at Judkins Street is because if you go left on Judkins Street, you can then get to the Central Area Neighborhood Greenway pretty smoothly. MLK north of South Judkins Street is in the city's long-term transportation plans as an area to install protected bike lanes. But getting this middle part between Judkins and Rainier done first has been the highest priority. We do have a very small amounts of planning money to look at MLK south of Rainier Avenue. So along the light rail line, so that's an area that we would probably be focusing on next. I would advise that if you are going to be riding on MLK after the project opens, you would probably your best bet would be to turn at Judkins Street or on the I-90 trail. But today on MLK itself, there are basic bike lanes today. It's a much older design. It wouldn't be comfortable for many riders, but they are there on MLK currently.
Okay, we don't have any open questions, any more open questions right now, but we're here and we're waiting if someone has another question. Thank you. How will construction equipment and the school be handled? Are there special provisions? I would say that I have been talking with the school, so they're aware of the project. But in terms of construction equipment and the school, I don't think we have any, we're not that far along to be assuming anything. I don't know, Marilyn, do you have anything you want to chime in on what that would look like as we move out of design and into construction?
I'm thinking about it. I don't want to make any assumptions about what the question is, what the concern might be. Is it about noise potentially? I'm imagining, right? And you can let us know if that's right. It's a little bit early to know where the contractor might be staging their equipment. I'm not quite sure where that would be, or sometimes we don't know until the contractor is actually selected and then starts working with our construction management team to get details like that nailed down. So that might be something that we might not know until we are about to actually begin construction. But if you have a specific concern that you would like to, there you go. If you have a specific concern that you would like to bring to our attention, then now would be a great time so that we can anticipate and plan for that. And then if we do need to put in some specifications into the contract that describes to the contractor what they're, what we expect them to do, then we can do that. So yeah, more information would be great if you can let us know what you're thinking there. And we'll continue to speak with the school as well. Sorry.
No, that's good. That's good. Okay. There's a couple more questions and so we have another one from Elizabeth. And the bike lane on McClellan heading east doesn't start until 30th or 31st. should this project look at tying into this existing bike lane to connect to the water or to the park to the east? And I don't know, Laurencio or Jonathan, either one of you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, so our project is not proposing changes to McClellan Street more than a few feet away from the intersection. Those 2 blocks though, between MLK and 30th, where the bike lane picks up, that could be something where a related project looks at a kind of a basic bike lane. I'm imagining maybe an uphill only one, just given the slope that's there. But I think this project would probably not be looking at it. I know there is a development right at that corner that's happening, but we could ask around internally and see if there's any interest in continuing getting those 2 blocks in.
Okay, great. And then I think this is where we're getting at, which was a follow-up question was, does the plan close the Sam Smith Park during construction? If so, for how long? And it would be good to have connectivity continue to the I-90 tunnel. And the truth is I think Marilyn kind of already addressed this, is like, we're not there yet. And I don't believe there's any intentions for impacts to the park closure or anything like that, but we're just not at that juncture, but that's outside of the area. I think Laurencio or Marilyn could confirm the same. I don't believe that's going to be an impact.
I don't think that we would be closing the park necessarily, but there very likely would be some changes, some changes to how pedestrians and bikes will route their way through there, to stay out of the area that's actively under construction, make sure that it's a safe area for people to get through. But planning for pedestrian and bicycle access during construction is one of the main things that we have our contractors do. They have to show provisions for how people are going to continue to get through. So yeah, that'll be a major part of the traffic control plans and so forth, the proposal that the contractor gives us. And then I noticed that you had given a follow-up on the school question to be a little bit more specific about what you were thinking about. And you mentioned parents pick up and drop off. So we hadn't quite discussed that. I think when we talked with the Thurgood Marshall School, we were hearing about that there is some pickup and drop-off activity that happens on MLK as well as around the more local streets to the north of the school. So we just had initial conversations about that. And Lisa, I know you've spoken with the PTA as well. And so I think that we may, as we get closer to this, need to have some further conversations about if we need to coordinate a little bit more on how that function is accommodated elsewhere, because during construction it wouldn't be possible, and then parking is being removed on that side of the street, and so long term the pickup and drop off function probably would not be happening there. So yeah, we'll have to continue discussing that. Yes. And make sure that the school and parents are aware of when those changes will begin, and then how that may shift elsewhere. But I think we want to be sensitive to what the school and parents' wishes are, and have them kind of lead what's the best way to meet those needs.
Yes, and just to follow up on that, I have been talking with the vice principal and doing just brief communications with the PTA president, Chantel, but we, just so folks know, we're at 60%. We actually plan to be coming out multiple times before construction to talk with folks, and there will even be pre-construction meeting to kind of, as we get really closer to that area where we can speak to some of these questions. Nothing wrong with asking them right now, just letting you know that there's going to definitely continue to be touch points where you're going to be learning about how we're progressing and what that work would look like as we get closer to it. So I appreciate everybody asking these questions now, but that's part of the reason why we can't be as detailed. And when Marilyn and I had a long conversation with the vice principal, who really explained how the school functions with pickup and drop off primarily in the inner circle with the buses, and that there are some parents, and it's not the primary drop-off point on MLK, but that there is that function that's happening there. So we definitely plan to continue conversations and make sure that parents are informed about this. So, okay, so for that, I think I'm going to move on to the next question then, which is, will landscaping be enhanced along Massachusetts to Judkins sections, which consists of mostly the Sam Smith Park? This could compensate for lost parking. I'll just say initially that as far as I know, that's not in the scope or budget of this project, but Marilyn, could you speak to that?
I was hoping Laurentia would.
But yeah, I think as Lisa as you said, it's currently not in the project scope, and we weren't impacting it. So part of our plan, we weren't planning to. Part of our project, we weren't planning to do anything to the landscaping. But yeah, we can look to see if there's ways to improve that. If if something is lacking, if some trees are dead, they could be replaced. So we can look into that.
And then we've got a question. Will you have community outreach and input in the future protected bike lanes north of Judkins before the project is started? So I think that's more of like a program level question, because this is a specific project that we're talking about, MLK. Jonathan, I know that you work closely with the bike program folks. Would you be able to speak to that a little bit about what the process is for new projects?
Yeah, so that project, so on MLK itself between Judkins and Union Street isn't really a project at this point. It's something that our long-term city transportation plans, specifically the bicycle master plan, have proposed, but it's not something that's on any of our kind of near-term plans of things that we intend to build in the next few years. So in this case, I couldn't imagine that outreach or planning or design on this would begin until at some point after 2024, which is when that current short-term plan ends. As with all of our bike lane projects, there would be outreach from the very beginning, but because there isn't a project for that yet, probably your best bet to provide feedback would be through some of our citywide planning efforts. Probably most specifically, again, would be the bicycle master plan. That is due to be renewed and have a new look taken at it pretty soon. I'm not sure when that will begin, though.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have a question. Where is the Judkins light rail, and how can bikers get there to MLK bike lanes? Does the Judkins light rail intersect with the Mount Baker light rail at any place? The Judkins light rail station is under construction right now, and it is between 23rd and Rainier on I-9. And to access from MLK via bike, what we would imagine is the I-90 trail, because the I-90 trail connects MLK to 23rd already, and then the light rail station, the eastern entrance of the new light rail station is a process of, it's coming alive before our eyes, being built from the ground up. We can see it if you're over in that area of 23rd. The west side of the new light rail station is on I-90, and so it's not as easy to see, but if you go up Rainier Avenue South and you're underneath the bridges of I-90, that you can see the work being done for the west side of that light rail station. So no, they don't intersect. The Mount Baker light rail station is south of the new Judkins light rail station. But they are nearby, and they are about the connected network in the community. So I hope that answers that question. Let me see, will there be modification to the bus overhead lines or bus? Okay, so a separate question, sorry. I wasn't sure if it was in addition. Will there be modification to the bus overhead lines or bus stop locations? Laurencio, can you speak to that one?
Sure, yeah. So we're starting with the bus stop locations. The only proposed change is what you saw on the first few slides at the I-90 trail. So the southbound bus stop that it's currently just south of Judkins will move south to the I-90 trail to be a pair with the existing northbound stop. Yeah, this one right here. So that's the only change to the bus stop locations, and this is only in the southbound direction. The northbound is already existing bus stop at the I-90 trail. And as far as the bus overhead lines, we are coordinating with King County Metro, who is the owner and is running the buses here. And part of the shifting of the lanes on MLK will require some adjustments to the bus overhead lines. We're still developing those plans, but yeah, we expect that some of the overhead lines will need to be relocated, mainly between Massachusetts and Plum Street, I believe.
Okay, we have a question. Is there any discussion for permit street restrictions to keep neighborhood parking open for residents? Jonathan, could you answer that one?
Yeah, so this project would not be doing any sort of permit parking or a residential parking zone. But when new light rail stations open in Seattle, our curb space management team, they go out and do a lot of really detailed parking studies and do a lot of work with the neighborhood on whether there should be residential parking put in place to basically stop people from just driving in, parking, and taking light rail. And how many streets would that cover? What streets get covered specifically? The last time I checked in with our parking team, they were planning on starting that in late 2021 or early 2022. I can certainly go and get an update from them to see if they're still on that timeline. Typically, they work between 1/4 mile and 1/2 mile from each entrance of a new light rail station. So that would cover most of this project area. But yeah, we can see if there's an updated date beyond early 2022 for that, or when that would begin and when you could talk to that team and provide some input.
Okay. This one's outside of this project, but maybe, Jonathan, you could speak to it just because it was a community event. But what was the justification for bike lanes on South Beacon? And I think that the same outreach that was done also informed the MLK. So I think less maybe about South Beacon, just what was that outreach that was done about for the Bike Master Plan program that determined these projects?
Yeah, so right now, we are doing design and planning work for both Beacon Avenue South and MLK Junior Way South. We're doing this because when we went all over the city in 2019, and pretty much no matter who we were talking to or where the meeting was, the area people most wanted to see a new bike facility put in was in South Seattle, Southeast Seattle specifically. So we heard calls for Rainier Avenue South, MLK, and Beacon. Rainier Avenue South has proved to be a very challenging place to put in a bike facility. It's a corridor where we really need to keep transit and goods and people moving. There isn't a lot of spare capacity that could be replaced with a bike lane. But both Beacon Avenue and MLK can provide that north-south connection, and they do have spare capacity that was available. And that's the reason why we're moving forward on both of those two projects.
Okay. I don't see any more open questions, but we still have 10 more minutes, well, really about 5 more minutes. Just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. So we're open if anybody has any more questions. Does the study actually include proposed biking to see the practical hills and existing features? Could this be a video which is shared? Does the study? Was it that, I think maybe are you speaking about the study that was done in 2019? I'm not sure what study you're referring to.
Yeah, I know when we're at that level of like the citywide planning and we're trying to determine where would people most want to bike, hills are something that we would take into account. When we're doing modeling and trying to figure out what streets they go on, it would be things like hills, existing capacity, safety, how many people are biking there already and would benefit from an improvement, and that kind of thing. I don't believe we have a video on that, but I do think we have an outreach report. Maybe I can dig that link up and post that in the chat if I can find it in time.
Oh, that'd be nice, Jonathan, if you can. Yes, it was deciding where okay, so that was her follow-up to confirm that. Okay, well, we've got a few more minutes, and I just have a little bit of housekeeping to kind of inform folks of some things. Let's see if there's anything pending. Are bike master plans being had in places like Laurelhurst and Magnolia? The Bike Master Plan is a citywide program. It's, but Jonathan, could you speak to the Bike Master Plan a little bit more? Somebody's asking, because I think they're wondering if it's just specific neighborhoods or not.
Yeah, so the citywide plan does cover the entire city. It includes both places where we at SDOT are working, but it also includes things like the 520 trail and the I-90 trail and some of the trails through parks as well. I know there was at least one public meeting that was held in North Seattle. I'm not sure which neighborhood specifically. I did find that link, so let me paste that. And then
great.
I can go ahead and paste our, here's our short-term plan. So that's the one that covers out to 2024. And then our long-term plan is right here. And I will say caution with that short-term plan. We are in the process of updating that now. Not a whole lot is going to change, but there would be a new version posted pretty soon.
All right, I don't see any new questions or chats. So Wendy, if you want to move to those last slides. There we go. So I've been in the process, of course, it's been a little glitchy, but I'm sure I'll get it launched tonight. Everything's just having trouble on our interweb, but we are launching an online survey and we want your feedback on the designs we just discussed. So you'll find that link on the project website, and the survey will be open through until, I should say, Thursday, May 20th. So we've got a month. And we're also planning to host a pop-up event at the I-90 trail while the survey is open for folks that want to stop by, ask questions, and provide feedback on the project design. And that's actually going to be in coordination with the Office of Housing, because they're doing work on the accessible Mount Baker, and we're looking for opportunities where we can team up and have conversations with folks in the community about what we're working on. So look for that information. And that's a great cue and prompt to say that, you know, if you go to our project webpage, you can sign up for our listserv emails, and that will keep you up to date as well. So after we gather all the feedback that we learned tonight and from the survey and from that pop-up event, we'll use that information to you know, consider for as we move towards our final design. And we will share what we've heard and how that's informed the design this summer. And we will continue to stay in touch with you throughout this project. So like I mentioned earlier, we do plan to come back out into the community for a couple more touch points before we'd even go into construction. And you know, in the meantime, you can always stay informed and feel free to reach out at any time at the phone numbers. And actually, if you want to move over to the next slide, Wendy, I think that one's actually got some contact information. Thank you. Feel free to reach out to us at the project inbox, or feel free to give us a call. And again, there's a link, a quick link, because we do have really long government email, I mean, not email, but web links. So we try to keep something short and sweet for folks. And that survey will be open for 1 month beginning tonight. And we really thank everybody for your questions and your time and attendance tonight. Thank you. And everyone have a good evening.